Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Advertising the Apocalypse with me, Sim Kern, and Saffana Monajed. And we are talking this week. We're going to continue our conversation from last week about overconsumption. This is the podcast where we talk about the way elites are marketing our own mass death back to us and our own exploitation back to us. And so today we're going to talk about that in the lens of overconsumption. And we both read the book The Day the World Stops Shopping. And yeah, do you want to introduce yourself again,
Of
Savannah?
course. Yes, I'm Saffana. I am a communication strategist, which essentially, basically all I've been doing for the last 10 years is figuring out everything to do with marketing and media. I've worked with big brands to try and sell you anything from dates in your local supermarket to an idea. So I've been interested in the science and magic behind that. And now I help people figure out how to get their message out there if they are working for a good cause. I'm also here to try and figure out how advertising the apocalypse is going to happen. And I think I'm really glad that we're going to talk about this book. I'm excited to talk about my juicy hot takes.
I'm excited too because I read it and I read it on audiobook and I quite liked it. But I finished it about a month ago. I think I was reading it, some things, there were things that would pop out to me like, oh, that's a bit off, this and that, but nothing like overwhelming. But I can tell from your stories that you had some more major criticisms of it maybe. And so I wonder what, maybe because I was listening on audiobook, I just missed things, or they're like you have lenses on things that I didn't notice. But I thought as a whole, the book was sort of an interesting thought experience and made me like reflect on my own consumption in sort of new ways and on how like we might be able to address overconsumption, which as a crisis, which is very important and which is like threatening life on planet Earth. So, and all of our well-being.
Yeah. Mental and emotional, as well as like physical well-being. I think that's the thing of overconsumption now. And it's in the title. I think the clue's in the name. Like we're talking about overconsumption. But I think what we're getting to is, and if we're going to talk about prose, let's talk about prose of this book, if anyone's read it. Maybe it's nice to give like an overview of what the book was about, because I was very honest in that I think I got about halfway through ahead of today, which I'm reasonably proud of.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so
Reading
much.
a book, again, we were talking right before we started, we're both stay-at-home parents. We're right now the baby's napping in my like near my office, which is why I'm in my teenager's bedroom right now. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a big thing. But let's give an overview of the book. I'm gonna give maybe an overview of the first half, and then you take us through the second half. I feel like that'll be maybe the way that we do it. So the overview that I've gotten so far is that this gentleman, J.B. McKinnon, who I've figured out his actual name is what do they call him? James Bernard. James Bernard McKinnon is a gentleman who goes through this kind of simulation of what happens when consumption slows down in the entire world. And he goes through what it would look like in this scenario. And from what I've read so far, he goes through scenarios that he can draw inspiration from. So things like COVID-19 and what happened when we slowed our consumption right down because we weren't allowed outside, or places like Finland where they had this kind of economic crisis for a while, and so consumption also slowed down. Or he goes to this researcher in Canada and is like, put this in your simulation machine and see what happens if all Canadians were to stop shopping tomorrow, and figure out what. So basically it's a whole bunch of like, what would happen with this and what would happen with that and what would happen with that and what would that look like. And I think his general estimation so far is like, what would happen if we stopped about 25-ish% of our consumption? So it's not like all in total, whoop, we stop, but in most of it. But lots of it is like, okay, a modest, what happens in this scenario? And of course, he's leaning into the kind of global crisis of like the climate, and he's wanting, so it's that angle versus like other angle centricities. But I think we'll get into this more. His way of expressing his thoughts and feelings were the things that I was like, you're telling a lot about yourself there, James. Like, and it does not look, for me, it doesn't sound good. Like but we'll get into that. Anyway, so far I'm at the bit where he has just learned from Finland, and where they went through this kind of like crisis, and Finland forced their country to slow their consumption right down, and they went back to kind of like burning wood for fire and stuff like that, and power and warmth, for I think 4 years or 7 years or something like that. And that's the bit I'm on. But before that, he went through that Canadian thing, basically lots of like the global north. Okay, which tells you a little bit more about why I'm going to be like, okay, hot takes there, James. Anyways, that's where I'm up to. Then what happens? Sim, you tell us.
Well, I think there is more of a focus on the global south in the second half, because he is talking about like examples of ways to live without all this hyperconsumption. So I think the beginning is sort of looking at how could we slow down the hyperconsumption of the north. And he's making this point that it's only ever happened, like carbon emissions have only ever fallen because of economic crises, never because of like all the green technology and all the solar panels and wind turbines and everything have not caused emissions to go down. It's only like economic crises. So like, and which means like people consuming less, right? So like, but what if, in the whole thought experiment, what if we like purposefully chose to consume less in order to save the planet? One of the sections I found interesting in the first part also was like the Sabbath part, which like I never thought I would like embrace a Christian Sabbath, like day off of business.
Yeah.
But the amount that would like help reduce carbon emissions and also like solve a loneliness crisis. And like it sounded kind of nice to like have a day where everyone would be off and together at the same time.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think he talks more about solutions. Again, I finished it a month ago. So, and I was like trying to catch up, but the part I like reread over the last couple of days was the part that you did. He also talks about different lenses of consumption. Cause like I've really tried to, for years, like buy less, make do with more, repair things, and like be really mindful of my consumption. And then since like over the past year and a half with like BDS happening and just like boycotting Amazon, I think gotten even better at that. But then he talks about like kinds of consumption that we don't really think about, like light pollution, like just like keeping your lights on, energy consumption, like air conditioning. There's a whole chapter on air conditioning, which like being in Houston, like that's a lot of consumption. Like, could I survive turning the AC up? And he talks about how like, but it was interesting. Like there was resistance to AC when it first came out because people enjoyed the pattern of the seasons. And like, even though it was hot in summer and it was sweaty, that meant everyone got to kind of slow down and take it easy. And people didn't want it to be 72 degrees all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think in the second half, there are more examples of, cultures in the global south that haven't adopted a Western air-conditioned car culture, hyper-consumption lifestyle, as like examples we could look to, as like hopeful examples that we should like to emulate. But yeah, I remember like Ecuador, he focuses on in particular, because Ecuador is a country with like a very high standard of living by a lot of different metrics, but like they do like one world planet living. So people are on average use the amount of resources that everyone on Earth could use, and the planet Earth would be enough. Whereas in the United States, the average American uses, or USian uses 5 planets worth of resources on a daily basis. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think the premise is really nice. Like, I think as a simulation of like, what does it look like to consume less is a very pertinent question, especially when I like, so when we think about what's happening right now, right? So in the universe, in the world, where I think we're coming to a point of potential critical mass of those who have power, right? I think we've reached critical mass of humans in a while ago, but a critical mass in the West where people have power. I think we're about to reach that in terms of being on the right side of justice. It only took 70 something years, but I think I'm hopeful that we will get there soon. But I think what people are going to notice is that the power in our hands has always been to stop spending. Like that's such a big reverse Uno of the universe, where it's like that's actually something that we can all do right now. Like if we were all to stop spending, the message that you would send to the powers that be is so much larger than if we were all to leave and protest. because that's the money that's what they
Yeah.
hear. And I was having this debate actually with my mum where she was just like, but I need to clothe something. And I was just like, my friend, nobody will be naked tomorrow.
Yeah.
If everyone stops shopping. I promise you. I promise you. And then when I kind of just went, but your wardrobe is full of clothes you do not wear, it just went silent. It was like, yes, checkmate. Yes, very good. So it's that thing of like the idea I'm 100% on board with. And when it comes to BDS and all of this stuff, I think I feel like Sim, you and I are. I mean, I'm assuming because of what we're doing now. I feel like we've been boycotting for long before we've been told to boycott. Like that's like stage one where you go, I have not done that anyways. So we don't mess with the powers that be anyways. But the next step up is, okay, if I'm going to consume, it's going to go straight into someone's hand who's going to do good with that money. Right? This is very, very conscious consumption. And then you go, wait a minute, my biggest the card, like the checkmate, the biggest checkmate that we all have access to right now is if you were only going to spend money on your essentials, this would all be over tomorrow. Like, yeah, you'd crash the thing. You'd be like, because nothing can run. And I know that there will be immediate consequences for everyone. So I'm not so dumb as to be like, oh, just crash the economy. It'll be all totally fine. There will be chaos that comes out of it. What I'm saying is it will definitely send a message of this is what it looks like to unify. And I think that will be the scarier thing. The implications of that versus the direct thing will be the awakening that the powers that be will need. But anyways, that's what I liked.
Yes, I had many of the same thoughts.
Yeah.
Reading this book. And what's wild is also just in terms of how doable it is.
Yes.
They said, he said it's only 25% reduction. You crash the whole global economy.
Yeah.
That's way more than we actually stopped consuming during COVID-19.
Yes.
And if you think about, oh shit, I just have to just think about cutting your consumption by 25%. You're leaving your air conditioner a few ticks higher, you're not getting the splurgy snacks at the grocery store, you know what I mean? And you're not buying those unessential things.
Yeah. The way I said it to my mom is if you have 4 things in your basket, just take one out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very doable.
And it is. And it's so funny though, it's so there's so much to talk about here. But yes, I agree. I've been thinking that this is actually a place that I might try to talk to liberals and get liberals and leftists to work together, because leftists want to do a massive boycott because of Palestine, but liberals just can't see anything except how much they hate Donald Trump. And this is how you destroy Donald Trump politically. If you're willing to crash the economy together, just boycott consumer spending, and his administration will be done. If there's a 25% drop in consumption in the US, it'll be done, Yeah.
And you'll accomplish much more than just taking down Trump. I think Trump is the face of it. Yeah. So it's obviously it's, I mean, come on now. It's even if we're being so for real, yeah. Yeah. Time will take down Trump sooner than you will if you're trying to do it via getting together, right? Let's be honest, he doesn't have that many more years left in him. But what I'm saying is if you want to take down a system, that's going to take unity. So yes, of course, but it's obviously not just it's if we're thinking punching through the goal, as we like to say, then I do think it's understanding how much power you have if by choosing. And I think you said that very nicely, actually, because I think I glossed over that. It's if you have the choice and agency to not spend, and you do that very consciously. But again, I think what I was so disenchanted by in the book, if I'm being honest, is the and maybe it speaks to where my head is at, is the obviousness that we are consumers. I don't know how to say that other than that. Maybe because I take consumption quite seriously because of my faith. I genuinely do just take it very, I have to justify money because in my understanding, it's not mine anyways. So I choose to consume it very consciously. And I don't think that's for everyone. I just think it's a thing if you're trying to actually really, really practice the faith. But I think it's that thing of when he was, So many examples. The one that comes to mind where he was like, and imagine you can't buy, just recently, you couldn't have bought anything on a Sunday. And I'm like, why is that crazy? Like, why do you think I think that's great? Like, why do you think I'm on board with you? And I think that was the bit that I found offensive as I was reading this, where,
Like the assumptions that he made about the reader.
yes, where I was like, why do you think I think this? And some of them, for me, reading them as a very Muslim person.
Oh, right. Because and also in the UK, you guys have still a lot of
Sunday trading
laws. Yeah.
Yeah, we have Sunday. So
yeah, he was very much writing for like American, like USians. Like,
which is weird because I don't think he is American. I think he's just been based in Canada for a while or something to that effect. Yeah, like he's from Sheffield or something. But I'm like, why is that weird? Like, what is, and also this is the thing that so the introduction, the reason I find it very lackluster is if you were to read this book, anyone who's watching this, what you would be faced with is, I think, the thing I was faced with, where he was describing the world of a hunter-gatherer tribe. I think in me giving this anecdote, I think it will contextualize the rest of my feedback. As he was describing this hunter-gatherer tribe, he was like, and they seemed happy. They were content. Could you believe it? It seemed that these people who were like, he was basically just about
okay, I felt like, because that tribe was they were the subject of a movie called The Gods Must Be Crazy, because there was like a long history with that tribe. So I feel like that's in the context of they were studied by these anthropologists, and the anthropologists were expecting them to be, that's the way I read it. The anthropologists who came and studied this tribe were expecting them to be like starving and struggling, and their life is, nasty, brutish, and short. And instead, it was like the anthropologists were like astonished to find how like, enviable the lives of these hunter-gatherers were. And then that became like the subject of the movie, The Gods Must Be Crazy.
Yeah. So yes, to a certain extent. But then I would have agreed with you if he didn't then be like, and then there are countries that you wouldn't expect to be doing one world living and happy, countries that are crazy. And I think he called them like, he didn't say crazy. He said something like violently Islamist something, and then cited countries like Turkey. And I was like, have you been to Turkey? Like, and then he was like, countries like Malaysia. And I'm like, have you been to Malaysia? Like, do you know that it's not like, what do you think it is? Like, it's like, so for me, I would have agreed with you, like, he looked at this and he was just like, those crazy anthropologists back in the 70s, not knowing. If he didn't do the same now in 2020 something, like, baby boy, like, and I think there's, but he's not the first and he's not the only, James. James Brennan, mate, whatever your name is, babes. You're not the only person to look at these people and be like, there's nothing they can teach me. And also say it like that. And I think that's the way it came across, is that where you come across what could be perceived as wisdom, you dismiss it as an accident. And I think that's the lack of humility that I do not like, when people are like, and again, it's like, you're telling me GDP is not a good indicator of happiness, of progress, and then you go, but so the West, to combat this, came up with the Genuine Progress Index, and you're like, who came up with the idea of genuine progress? Was it you? Because if it was you, again, you're doing it again. You're just relabeling it. You're just going, oh, it's not just about money. And then you're going, no, but this is it. This is the right time. Like, how many times does it take to be like, maybe our culture doesn't know everything, for you to then concede and be like, maybe there's a better way. And I think, and not like, wow, there's a better way. Like, it's that thing of, like, I don't know if I'm making sense, but it seemed it was like you're telling me the example of why you got it wrong before while you're getting it wrong now. And the lack of humility is one of the reasons you're going to continue to be in this crisis, unless you want to be humble enough to be like, I genuinely don't know anything. Not like, these people know. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I think that was the bit that and again, it's that thing of like, the Sabbath is da-da-da-da, and you're like, is that the only who came up with the Sabbath? Right. And I want it to be like, credit where credit is due. There are cultures that understood that consumption could be a disease. Okay.
Well, he did talk about that. He talked about it.
Then you're like, Then you're like, go on then, James. Like, go on then. Let's go on. Let's have it out.
Yeah.
Let's then take. And do you think they stopped there? Because you saying it like they've stopped there and that was the basis of it, and that was all we had to learn from there. And then I was
Mhm.
like as someone reading it, I was like, dig a little deeper. Or like when he's saying, I don't know, it was just very closed. That's how I read it. I was like, you're speaking about your experience and you're pretending this is a holistic experience. And and I think, but again, it's that thing of like, I've stopped being enchanted by purely Western perspectives, because I'm
Yeah.
like, it's a very closed-minded perspective. And again, I'm saying this because even when he was speaking about COVID-19 and the stuff that we learned coming into COVID-19, and oh, for the first time we all saw spring, and we were like, oh, we love spring because we can. And I'm like, babes, also that's a few people experiencing spring, and I totally understand. There were also 2 billion people who experienced a Ramadan that they'd never experienced before, because and that was a huge thing. Like, you can't
Mhm.
dismiss 2 billion people experiencing one thing. And then, do you know what I mean? I was just like, dig a little deeper
Yeah.
beyond your perspective.
Yeah.
And okay, Sabbath, where did it come from? How does that affect people? Can we go
Yeah.
into Christian minority countries that have resisted overconsumption? Can we go into communities where that was what it was. I was like reading it, like, tell the whole story.
Yeah.
um
And he's
and then,
ultimately limited by like being a first world white guy writing his perspective, which is limited.
which again, I wouldn't mind if there was humility in that.
Yeah.
I genuinely, because your intention speaks
Yeah.
volumes, and you can read intention if someone's written 500 and something pages, their
Yeah.
intention comes through, right? So for me reading it, I was like, I don't, your slip ups of Islamophobia, I can smell them. They're stinky. They're very smelly.
Well,
And I was like, sorry.
let's talk then about, then we need more different narratives, more different
Yeah.
perspectives about ending overconsumption and about
Yes.
noticing overconsumption.
Yeah.
So
Sorry.
maybe we
Okay.
should talk about, what those things are and what we're doing in our lives. Have you changed anything about your consumption this month, just since like our last conversation about it? And like, um, you
Yeah,
know,
that's a very good question. Yes, the answer is yes. And but to be honest with you, I've always tried to consume. No, it's not even a try. Since knowing what media and marketing is, it is very difficult for me to be enchanted by an advert.
mhm,
So there is a wonderful chapter in this book that talks about advertising, where he's like, adverts don't want anything from you, and that's a crazy world to live in, right? If in the world where we stop shopping. So teamed with my already kind of like, I think it was Kevin Hart, as in one of his like comedy things. He said, my friend is one of those Muslims who reads the backs of packets as a joke. You know, like lots of Muslims read the back of packets to see what ingredients are in things. Basically, all this to say is there's already a filter where I
mhm,
assume that I can't consume a thing until I'm told I can consume a thing. Does that make sense?
yeah,
Like, and I can't imagine a world otherwise. Like, is this the truth? Like, I can't imagine walking to a restaurant and be like, I can eat anything. Like, that to me is like a crazy train of
yeah,
thought. So, so if you take that as my baseline, Sim, the truth is I don't consume that much at all.
yeah,
After this book, what it's encouraged me to do is encourage others to not consume. And what it's done is it's made me have a real issue with the word overconsumption and the word, quote unquote, progress. I've already had contention with the word progress, but now
the
I
word
really,
progress is fucked. Yeah, that's progress. I just said it like you.
yeah, progress,
Progress.
progress, yeah, progress is progress,
Yeah,
progress.
progress is fucked. I'll agree with you on that.
Mhm.
Very, very dangerous word.
Yeah, but
Very bloody word.
yeah, it's awful. But I do, I know, like, for example, even after reading this book, I still had to try and get a gift for someone for
Mm.
like cultural norms. So I know that we can't all stop consuming. Anyways, what about you? What have you done since reading this book?
So I also, because of like my environmentalism, ever since I was like in 8th grade, I've been like, a little environmentalist, and I've tried to consume responsibly. And so I do a lot of things. I mean, like, I cloth diaper my baby. That's like a huge thing that I do. I go back and forth, like trying to, it's like, I'm always like trying to be vegan. But first of all, everyone in my family isn't on board. Second of all, like I just found out my daughter has like really terrible eczema and we're working on that. So now we're like working with the dietitian. She
Baby.
maybe needs more red meat to like, because she's just really thin and like putting on a little weight might help with it. Like there's just like, and like having more proteins. So, and like B12. So like, I'm always like, I'm an aspirational vegan and I try to make always like a couple plant-based meals a week, but I can never like make it happen. And then like, you know, and then like I've only bought like secondhand clothes for years and years.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of the things in this book was like eye-opening for me about like sort of invisible consumption I don't think about, like running the air conditioner.
Yeah. And the
But not
lights.
not thinking about that as consumption, just like, and like being in a house with 3 kids. I mean, it's constant that I look around and like, it's the middle of the day, but every single light in the house is on. There's 2 TVs running and that no one's watching. Like, you know, like there's just all this stuff plugged in that doesn't need to be, you know. And then I thought, and then I thought about too, like, you know, we all have a lot of hobbies and I've been thinking about how much like hobbies can just be consumption. Like a lot of people's hobbies is just like really an excuse to consume.
Yes.
So I thought about, you know, I want to like pursue a hobby that's really low consumption for this month. And I decided to get back into playing violin because I have played violin like on and off my whole life, but since the baby was born, I really haven't picked it up. So I was like, let me get back into that because I already have the instrument. I don't have to buy anything. And I decided I wanted to learn to fiddle because I was like classically trained and I've never learned like fiddle styles. So I started like teaching myself off YouTube. But then like I like blacked out and forgot I was doing this not to consume. And I like bought 3 books of fiddle music like in sort of a blackout, sort of consumerist fog one day. And then I was like, wait, shit, I was trying not to do that, but I like couldn't, you know, I couldn't stop that muscle of being like, oh, I got, and like I could have bought 1 book and had enough sheet music to keep me occupied for months. But I just felt like I needed these 3. You know, I just got carried away like that. And it's so hard in our culture. I don't know, not to.
It is. It really is. And I think that's the thing that came across in the book of like, it's a very culture thing. It's a very, but again, it's like which culture? And then if you're going to say this is this culture, look at the cultures who have like, look at the cultures who've resisted it and then learn from them in a very like open way. I think rather than like, do you know what I mean? Like rather than like pushing the thing up the hill of like, where have they suffered to learn? And it's like, actually, there's some people who've been resisting it from the beginning. Ask them. And like, it's that thing of like, growing up poor is one of the great ways to not be a consumer. Like it's a real shortcut. And I think
he does deal with that at some point. Yeah.
He mentions in the book, he was like, being poor, is like something, and then a family budget, something. And I was just like, again, James, like, even I don't know, even something to do with the way that he was addressing them. Like it's still like you guys, you're losing out, you're missing out. And it's like there are some people who do this again on purpose. Like you don't have to go. I don't know. There was just that thing of like there are people who have to contend with an ethical membrane, like semi-permeable membrane, in order to give you their money. Ask them what's happening. Because that's a real shortcut. Because if you're saying the only way we can do this is if we start to what's the word he used? I think I wrote it here. He said something like we do it by design. Like we choose to not consume. That's the only way this happens, is we choose to not consume. Then I thought to myself, there are people who do this. Why would you not ask them? Because so far in the book, who he's asked are people who've been forced to.
Yeah.
And then go, what happened there? And I'm like, why don't you ask people who live the same life you do and have all the ability?
At the very end, he goes and talks to some people who like do, but it's a very Western thing. Again, it's like some guy who like bicycles to work and is vegan and, you know,
yeah, it's like, you know what? Some people, you know what? Maybe it's also like because I've got friends who write books and I'm like, and I can see that they have a varied amount of friends because of who they feature in their book.
They talk to, yeah.
And sometimes when I read books, I'm like, just get different friends. And for some men, I'm like, sometimes just talk to a lady. no worries. Like, do you know what I mean? Sometimes I'm like, just talk to someone with a different experience. And that happened when it was just like the whole world goes black and we start living in the nighttime and we're no longer afraid of the dark. And I'm like, have you spoken to a woman about that? Because I feel like a lot of women who live in cities would be like, yeah, fine, have them dimmer, but don't have them off, because then I can't go out at all. So like, you're gonna need to address some other, do you know what I mean? Like, speak to someone, just see if you get a different perspective. Anyways, yeah, it's that thing of like, there is a conscious consumption that happens in the universe. I think it would have been nice to acknowledge that. And at least, again, it's just that thing of like, credit where credit's due. Like, there are people who earn money and then give it away. There are people who earn money and then don't consume, but they share what they've got. Those people exist. And I think if you were to seek them out rather than go, I just think it would just make for a much more productive conversation. I really do. And I think those people are not who he thinks they are in his head. They're like aunties and uncles who like run like these small community funds for like local, do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't look pretty, doesn't look sexy, but it's gonna give him the ideas that he wants. Like, I think there was just a bit of me that was like, I wish he had spoken to like the auntie in the community. But I don't know how he would have had access to her unless he had access to someone who has a different life to him. And it was just very clear in the book. That's all it was.
It reminds me of like, you know, maybe I'm like, it didn't jump out to me as much because I've spent so much time in the environmental movement. And I think what you're describing is just such a big, widespread problem. Like, if you think about like the COP 20, whatever summits, you know, it's just all a circle jerk of like these big business people and then like a few academics and intellectuals who think they can talk to the big business people. It's elites, right? It's elites talking to other elites about how to solve climate change. Yes. And this book was situated in that space. Yeah.
And it was smelly. That's all it is. Like, I see you, JB. I see what you're trying to do. But the thing is, again, I think you would have better. And again, these aunties who I'm talking about, they ride the same buses that your kids do. So it's not like they live in some weird, like, they do what you do. They've just, do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think you have to go to, and again, the preface is he goes to a tribe that was spoken about in the 70s. Baby boy, this has happened in 2025 down the road from you. Just, do you know what I mean? They share a postcode. You don't have to go that far back in the archives to look at people who don't consume that much. And they're not doing hunter-gatherer. They're just doing a little more of the community vibe. Like, and I think, yes, stop shopping. Yes, boycott. Yes, all of this. Yes. But there's just a way to do it that's not like we're going to fix this problem. Like, I don't know. It's like the Western ideal. Sorry to do this, but the Western ideals got you to where that you are. You've acknowledged that this well-being is actually another way to do more consumerism. Why can you not acknowledge that you probably, based off of this trajectory, since you love trajectory so much, you probably won't have the capacity to fix the problems because you're going to be going off the same foundations. Try something else. Like, just try something else. Like, I don't know. That's how I read it. I was like, if only you did this. That was it. So that's, sorry if I'm pissing anyone off, but what I'm saying to you is like, yes, save the planet, but you probably don't have the answers, and the answers may not be written in English. Yeah. That's it.
Okay. I think we got an interesting comment about another book that's on the same topic by Jason Hickel, who's a white leftist. Kind of I don't know if he's an academic or not. He's on social media a lot, and he has a lot of really spot on tweets, but I have not read his book, but I wonder if it would also feel sort of like very global north-y.
I think it'd be hard to not.
I mean, it's hard not to. If I were to write, I mean, I am thinking about writing a nonfiction book about climate change, but you're giving me lots of pause about like, how do I make sure I'm not just writing from within an echo chamber to an echo chamber, you know?
Well, which is, I wouldn't mind, again, like, because if the echo chamber is going to make the difference by you giving them a new hot take, then at least acknowledge you do not have the resources to get you out of the situation that you're in because of the resources that got you there. I just think there's a sense to that. And again, I'm going off of pure logic. I'm going off
Yeah.
of pure logic. If the logic of capitalism, he works at University of Spain, so
So he's an academic. Yeah.
yeah,
Jason
which is
Smith.
again,
I
again,
appreciate him online.
not
Yeah.
an attack. There's not an attack to these man. I'm just saying, if you had been more humble and not
Yeah.
pointed to the 70s and a hunter-gatherer tribe, it would have been a very different conversation, because then you don't make it sound like what this is, a science fiction. You just make it sound like,
Yeah.
listen, there's this auntie in Kent and she runs this community. And,
I'm so I'm
yeah.
so curious now to finish. So there's a book I started that I really want to finish reading, but I haven't been able to finish. It's called The Dawn of Everything. And it's by David Graeber and some other guy. And David Graeber's like, he died a few years ago, but he was an anarchist. He was another like white male academic from the US, but he's like very famous anarchist writer. And it's a book about how this idea that this idea that like ever since agriculture started, authoritarianism has just like been on the rise. That like the worst thing humans ever did was figure out how to plant a plant. And it's supposed to be disrupting that narrative and like the myth of progress. It's supposed to be like disrupting this myth of progress by showing like all these different, like how much like prehistory has been distorted to sell that narrative. And like there's actually all these different cultures and all this different ancient evidence of people organizing themselves in really varied ways that was not just authoritarianism, you know, and elitism. And that there were like cool anarchistic, democratic, all kinds of different ways of social organization before the modern era that have been sort of like erased by Western anthropology. But I haven't actually read it. And I wonder if it would also fall into this trap of like white Western academics recognizing there's a problem, but being unable to sort of step outside of the problematic mindset we are raised in.
I think it's the foundation. The foundation of, because again, what I'm telling you stinks is the foundation, because it's a fundamental belief that we've got it right and we're just yeah. It's even saying it out loud. It's like, why would you say that? Like, does that make sense? Like, it would irk. It's like you've said the silent bit out loud, because the bit that irks me in this and in so much other writing, is like they'll be like, okay, it's literally okay. I'm gonna read it. Lee wasn't the only one to report remarkable well-being where outsiders had never expected it. Why did you never expect it?
Oh yeah, and who are out? Yeah.
What are you doing? What are you talking about? Like, why have you gone in with this expectation of like, there's no way, baby? Who are you? Like, literally, it's that thing of like, you just didn't even pause to go, oh, Malaysia could be all right, or like this bit could be all right. You just didn't even do that. And I think that's the bit that throws me. And that's the fundamental belief that, because as I was writing this, I was like, wait till they hear about Bedouins, because then their minds would be blown. They're going to see people who are happy. Like they're going to be like, what do you mean? They'll be like, yeah, we could use a smartphone if we wanted. You know about smartphone? Yeah, we do. You know about this? Yeah, we do. Like it's going to blow his mind. Like, what are you going to do when you see, do you know what like, and again, it's that fundamental belief that like, it's a refusal that there could be intellect beyond this intellect.
Yeah.
And when you read something written by someone who has that belief so deep in them, it's a very loud thing in the background. It's like a hum where, and again, I'm saying this as someone who's come up in the Western schooling system, where I've had to quieten the bits around me where I know there is wisdom, because that wisdom is looked down upon because it's not scientifically proven. But then you go, no, but I see the proof in the pudding. Like, this community just runs better than you. People are happier than you. Like, they're willing to have more free time. Like, they spend less than you. There's a circular economy that you've mansplained to me as if it's not just people sharing because they live in a community and they want you to. Do you know what I mean? Like, what are you doing, bro? Like, just put your leftovers in a tub that you didn't have to buy because it's Tupperware. Like, it's a tub that you got from. Do you know what I mean? Like, just some stuff that you're like, people have been doing it. Don't mansplain it to me and then go, it's the way that we're going to save the planet. Like, it's just people have been, I don't know, like I don't know. It's just that thing of, how could they have it right if we're so much better than them, is how the whole book reads. But again, it's not an attack on JB. It's just so much other stuff I've read. And lots of it will be like, and we're going to save the planet. And I'm like, okay, good luck with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good luck with the books, go. I don't know. Sorry again. Okay. Keep
You
going
know,
on.
apologies. This is really interesting, and it's good, and it's eye-opening for me that, like, I don't know, I wasn't as bothered by those things, which is like makes sense, you know, like because of the culture that I'm more steeped in, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I know, same. Also same, by the way. Like, because do you know what I mean? Because when I was being honest when I said to you I came up in the British schooling system,
yeah.
which I was just thinking about it today as I was reading this book. I was like, I was supposed to be 10 years old and being proud when my teacher said, and it was said that the sun never set on Great Britain. Like,
Oh,
and
wow.
but that's,
Oh, they were like that.
you
Yeah.
understand?
Yeah.
And you're supposed to be like, yeah, boy. We're just a small island and we did all of that. And you're like, yeah, okay, but now explain to the 10-year-old how many dead bodies there were because of that. Like now try and get them on board humanitarily. Now try and get them on board morally versus just an ego trip of
Yeah.
like the sun never set on Great Britain. Like we're supposed to say that in our hearts and be like, even though it's my country. Like, anyways. So
Well,
all this to say,
let's talk about propaganda because
okay, yeah,
I was reading this chapter, so I was re-skimming it today, and he was being critical, but he was interviewing this guy at the IEA. I don't even remember what that stands for, but this is an agency that pretends. Okay, it's an agency that it's some international think tank, and they fully understand. Oh yeah, the International Energy Agency. They fully understand that the only way to reduce carbon emissions is if the global economy goes down, if consumption goes down.
Yes.
They do not allow themselves to consider for a moment a situation where the economy goes down.
Yes.
Because what's decoupling is this idea that you could maybe someday make technology good enough that we could keep consuming more and more and more forever and ever without harming the environment. That's called decoupling, and that's obviously like a fantasy, and there's no evidence that it has ever happened or is ever going to happen. But they all of their like plans for the future for addressing climate change focus on decoupling rather than reducing consumption because that is treated as unthinkable. And he quotes this guy who works for the IEA saying, "We took an assumption that we don't think that human nature could change." And that did jump out at me. And I wrote in the margin. Now, this isn't the author saying it, but quoting the author's kind of making fun of this guy who's quoting it. That it's not human nature to be overconsumers, it's propaganda, right? Do you agree? Like the reason we are, or not, you don't even like the word overconsumption, which we should talk about that more, that word. But the reason we are, you know, recklessly consuming and unhealthily consuming is because of propaganda.
Yeah. Well, but the propaganda again is because then when we say propaganda, we have to clarify a nation state is thus because it needs to exist violently because it is no longer to help the people in the nation, it's to help the companies who have more power than the nation itself. So therefore it makes more sense that the nation's propaganda would include consumption because they are just the face of the companies running in the background, because companies have more power than you in the country you happen to live in, and you need to believe you belong to a country to feed your ego so that you have a reason to, as George Bush said it, keep shopping. So now okay, so now we're all on board as to why there is propaganda. So now we're on board as to why there's propaganda telling you to consume because their funders are telling you to consume. So now you have, and again, you've quoted that bit. This is the bit I quoted, and this is the author speaking, where he says the amount of plastic we recycle needs to double, which still wouldn't be enough to keep up with humanity's rising hunger for plastic products. What a passive way to say that we've been made to want plastic. Like, who's coming up with this plastic? Who is it? It's a country. It's the companies that run the country that you live in. So they're saying I have to. Oh, if only we weren't so hungry for plastic. I'm not eating it. So if you were to stop,
I have a crazy story about. You want to hear a wild story about that? This is one of the most depressing things that ever happened to me. This was like the end of me doing environmental organizing in Houston. So plastic demand was actually on the decline in the United States, and plastic refineries were like shutting down everywhere. But then in the Obama years, we had the fracking boom. And the problem is that the gas that they get from fracking is like shitty. Like you can't put it into cars, you know, the natural gas. And there was like a glut of it. There was like way more of it than there was demand. And it was actually more expensive to frack than to just leave it in the ground because it wasn't worth enough. So they decided they were going to turn it into plastic, even though there was no demand for additional plastic. Plastic refineries were shutting down, but they made a plan. And here in Houston, within like an 80-mile radius of like a few 100-mile radius of my house, they built 80 new plastics refineries over the space of the last 10 years to deal with fracked gas that nobody wanted, that wasn't worth what it had cost to frack it out of the ground, poisoning all the water wells, to create a bunch of plastic that there was no demand for, but they were like, we'll manufacture the demand for the plastic, don't worry. And they built these, of course, with like giant government subsidies and taxpayer dollars.
Which again, the government is what?
Yeah.
Like you really have to, and then it gets messy because you then have to contend with what are you going to do with your money.
No.
And do you want that stuff? Do you want that onion chopper?
Yeah.
Sorry that the onion chopper gets it every. I feel like the onion chopper gets it everything. Yeah, that's yeah. The more you do.
So let's talk about propaganda though. What are the ways in which we're like? What are new ways that people should be on the watch for? What are like new ways? So in the last 10 years since they built these plastic refineries, now marketing teams, right, have had to work overtime figuring out how are we going to make people want a bunch of new plastic shit. What are some of the ways you're seeing
parents
that they're doing that?
Parents. Like parents and kids' toys. Your kids don't need that much toys. It's crazy. And another one always is like holidays, where we need decorations for every holiday, and it's like and again, it's that social thing. Lots of people
Halloween decorations.
Halloween decorations,
giant plastic skeletons.
Those things
in the UK. Do they have the giant plastic skeletons?
Yeah. They're coming here more and more. And in countries where like they don't need to be doing this kind of stuff, it's just that thing of keeping up appearances, and it makes you look progressive. If you sell the idea of progress, people are going to want to be progressive, and then you align it with a bunch of consumption, and then people are like, oh, perfect, this is how I stay on top of these things. And it is that thing of like aligning it with the status. Like we are so hungry to prove our worth because we're empty shells a lot of the time, that we will do it via our plastic signal. And sometimes that is through, a lot of the times that will be through gifts, toys, kids' toys and decoration, like things that are disposable. Just think about all the things that are disposable in your life, like seasonal things and things that you can only use for a short amount of time. That is where all that plastic is going. It is that.
One thing that's wild to me, this is like a small drip in the bucket, obviously. I'm not trying to call anybody out in particular, but the fact that now press-on nails, it's not just the plastic of the nails, but now they're like putting little plastic things on the plastic nails, and you can only wear those for like a week or two, right? And then they're just garbage. But it's like nails with little toys on every single nail. Like just the addition of that extra little plastic is like, they'll stick more plastic on anything.
But so let's think about, so if we're talking about like, okay, why did I say the thing about kids' toys? Yeah. So if you're thinking about strategy of like, I have lots more plastic, yeah, and then you go, who are the people who have money to spend? Yeah. And then you go, oh, I'm already trying to sell like people with households a whole bunch of stuff. And you go, eventually your house is going to be full of stuff, right? So you're selling like the people in the household, like, oh, this is for your kitchen, this is for your bathroom, this is for your organization, this is for your wellness, this is for a market that you are going to expose over and over and over again, or not expose, what's the word, like leverage, is always going to be going younger and younger, because the younger a consumer is, like the more years they can consume, the better. And that happens with everything. Yeah. So it happens from like wellness to like leisure, you know what I mean? Like, and so the same thing is going to happen with plastics. It's like, can we get the older people to consume and the younger people? You're just going to want to expand that window so that they're consuming for the whole of their lives. Because what they were trying to do all this time is like getting people who are in work, who are da-da-da. And now we're getting younger and younger and younger and older and older and older. So with the propaganda, I would just say, just be aware that they're going to leverage your ego and your willingness to spend so that you can be perceived as being more in line with what is wealthy. That goes beyond your postcode. And I would say, please know that this is not limited to those who have superfluous amounts of cash, which is why I hate the word overconsumption, because it makes you go, well, I'm not overconsuming. I'm just consuming.
Yeah.
So the othering. So when is that thing? That's why I hate the word overconsumption, because you instantly
where is the line, right?
Yeah.
I think we're like in the US, we're delusional about where the line should be.
Yeah.
So yeah, people thinking over could mean a lot of different things.
Yeah, which is why I think that it's like a red herring. It's like being overqualified. What does that mean? Like,
yeah,
what does that mean? You know what I mean? You're overqualified for the job. At what point did I overqualify?
What would you call consumption addiction? Like, what would you call it?
I think it's just going beyond your your basic needs, like going beyond your needs. And then I think you just be really clear with yourself. And the moment you start having like an honest conversation with yourself, then you can start. And I say this as someone who does this by herself, huh? Like, did I need that new thing? Did I really need? And then just keep it in your basket for a while. Sleep on it. I always say that to people, isn't it? I mean, listen, ever since I got TikTok, I'm like, listen, I'm telling you this as a marketer. My bottom line is to get you to spend more, because then I get paid more. It's not in my best interest. I'm a client, by the way. They don't want to hire someone who's on the internet telling you to take things out your basket. So I'm not winning. I'm not winning. I'm not winning by telling you this. I'm telling you this as someone who gets paid to make you part with your money.
Yeah.
Sleep on it. My job is to make you make that decision like that.
Yeah.
And just like you spent on those 3 books, is, maybe it was like a little 3 for 2 or little whatever it is, just put an extra one. Oh, don't worry about it. Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
Sleep on it. Just sleep
if
on
I'd slept on it, I wouldn't have gotten them. I would have been like, I could have printed all this music out just on the internet,
Yeah. You get an app, probably there's a free app. Like, there's loads of stuff you could do. So as someone who, honestly, just sleep on it. Don't buy it a lot of the time. Be honest with yourself, as if you're getting it to make, like, it's gonna sound very deep, innit? But are you getting it to heal a thing in yourself?
Yeah, no. So I'm getting it because I feel very trained, and I feel like I have to constantly fight this training that, like, the way you level up or get a new skill or fix something about your life or fix something in the US is always like buying something, and it comes from propaganda. It comes from, there's so many movies where the character growth is like a shopping spree, a makeover, we have shows like Queer Eye, and the entire HGTV and Bravo networks are just a 24-hour-a-day feed telling you will fix your life, you will become a better person, you will heal your relationships, you will become enviable and gain the respect of everyone if you just buy shit and like redo your house. And that, God, HGTV is my nemesis. Like, don't even get me started. The idea that the brilliance of these marketers convincing us that we have to like gut our homes and redo our kitchens every 5 years to stay on trend, or we're like disgusting, poor creatures. Like,
I think that's a really good point, is that the culture is based on so much of the stuff we consume without wondering what it's done to our psyche. And when we say like keeping up appearances, that's exactly what we mean, is like, I will be perceived as better than if I spend in a specific way, when the truth is there's lots of people who have been alive for a very long time will tell you, like, you just need like a couple of very good things in your life and you can use them on loop, and your character is what people will remember about you. So it really just depends on what you're trying to build. Like, if you are trying to, and the problem is that the fickleness begets fickleness. So that's the challenge. And so we have to kind of collectively, and again, we're talking about culture shift because it's based in a fundamental shift in how we see ourselves and what we pride as humans. And
Yeah.
if that's a conversation I think you want to have with yourself as a grown up, I have it with myself all the time. But again, it's easier for me with like a faith layer. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like it's very is a very quick equation for me to take things out my basket. Like I don't know what the other rigmarole would be, but essentially mine literally looks like, is this gonna get me closer to the thing I'm going for in the end, which is to meet God again? If it's not, I take out my basket. Like
And
so.
you never like slip up and you're like, oh, I didn't have to buy that.
With
Like, can
books,
you, huh? With
with
books?
books are my Achilles heels books. I'm not
See,
gonna lie.
and that's what it was
It gets
music
us all.
books. It was
Yeah,
music
it gets
books
us
because
all.
it feels
I'm not
educational.
better than anyone. I'm just
I
telling you my
know.
system.
I know.
Listen, I'm not better. I'm you. We're everyone. I'm the
The
David
only
Goggins of spending. You can call me.
yeah,
I don't spend nothing, but I'm still you. Like I'm
yeah.
still you. Yeah, but I
The
do spend.
only way to get better at violin is to practice. But like practicing is
Yeah.
hard. And so I just buying something is easy. And that's like about everything,
Yeah.
like our relationships with the people we love are hard. Communication with family members can be really hard and challenging. And it's like we could just buy stuff to buy gifts. I think so much in the US, like our relations, it's been really wild to me, like marrying into a Christian family, because sometimes it's like you don't see this relative all year except a certain time, and then you buy them something, and you're usually buying them some shit they don't want because you don't know them at all. You don't know what they want, what they need, what they have, what they don't have, what their interests are. But the expectation is you just got to buy them some shit once a year. That's the entire relationship, you know?
Yeah, Christmas is a trip.
um
Ain't gonna lie.
Christmas is wild. Yeah.
No, Christmas is true. Because I'm not. Yeah. Anyways, but it's a thing. Um, I think that you know what I think it'd be my template is a different template. Like I say, like so I think your one is maybe more helpful because you've come to the conclusion that you consume less anyway. So what's the equations you do? Like what's the mental arithmetic you do to do with secondhand clothes? To do with and I'm asking you this like in a way of like how do you balance the keeping up appearances with consumption? That's the question I'm
Yeah.
asking you.
Well, it's been a lot easier since I left teaching, like because the
Oh,
district I was in was really like, well, in terms of like clothes and stuff, because I don't have to like dress professionally very often anymore. So I can just wear t-shirts that I found at a thrift store every day, that's what this is. I wear t-shirts and jeans that I found at a thrift store, and that's fine.
yeah.
It's harder to dress professionally because professional dress is a white supremacist
Yes.
gatekeeping thing. You have to get them dry cleaned, right? Like, why are they professional clothes? Because it costs money. It costs more money to buy them, and it costs more money to maintain them. And it costs time. You have to drive to the dry cleaner. Like everything about professional clothes consumes more. Um, so, you know, that's
How
made
did
it
you
easy.
do it when you were a teacher then? How did you balance that? Because again, like if the
Yeah.
aim is this current and I'm saying this as someone
Yeah.
who I have to constantly recalibrate my aim.
Yeah.
And I because yeah, I don't know the kind of people who are watching this, but I don't know if you're people of faith, huh? When I say I'm punching through the goal, it's like my aim is not to impress you here. My aim
Yeah.
is to impress, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
The 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 God that I worship. So
Yeah.
it's not so for me it's a bigger equation. But
Yeah.
if my thing was I needed to, like if it stopped here, I don't know how I don't know.
I mean, and for me, the question of consumption is I'm always thinking about the carbon footprint, about the materials cost.
Okay.
Living in Houston, I live, like I said, in the shadow of petrochemical refineries. So all the plastics that get made in the United States of America get made down the street. And so anytime I'm consuming plastic, and I've worked in environmental investigative journalism, so I know, and I've spoken to families where they've had like generations dying of cancer, and like kids with leukemia. I've like taught kids who had leukemia because they're living on the fence line of these plastics refineries. So it's very personal, and it's like knowing the havoc and the pollution that every little plastic item costs. And that's why I get really frustrated with the bad faith. There's a really bad faith argument against like lowering consumption and lowering plastic use, that it's ableist to do so. And there's ways in which environmentalism can absolutely be ableist, but like nothing is more disabling than the petrochemical industry. Like so many kids have asthma and get all these horrible and get genetic conditions and get cancer because of the pollution of plastic manufacturing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
So, and then obviously like the climate effects are like, killing lots of people and will continue to. So yeah, that's those are like I feel accountable to a higher power. It's not spiritual per se, but it's like Mother Earth,
Yeah.
nature, the community of humans, like the well-being of my neighbors.
Because it is literally just an injustice. Like it
Yeah.
really is, like there's no other word for it. And
Yeah.
I think so like sometimes I have conversations where yes, I'll read like books like this, and I think the thing that irks me when people do that kind of like the otherworldly thing about like anywhere in the global south or whatever, is that they're like, that's where barbarism lives, like that's where it's like crazy and it's like blah blah blah. And I'm like, that's barbaric. This plastic refinery is barbaric. Like
Yes.
it's literally like it's malice for malice's sake, man.
Yeah.
Like and to put money above human life is barbarity.
And when you see what Exxon and Shell have done in Africa, that's the most barbaric thing that's ever happened in Africa, is what Exxon and Shell have done there.
And then you go there, the rest of it is actually just PR. Like the fact that you've made me think the victims are barbarians.
Yeah.
You are very good at PR. And I think that's what you and I see with this whole like advertising the apocalypse, is like we're trying to uncover we're trying to allow others into the fact that the PR machine needs to be seen as a PR machine. Like we are not on the right side of, we're not in the goodies realm. Like all of us here, my friends, we're not on the team goodie. I'm sorry. Yeah. That's what we're all kind of uncovering a little bit by little bit. And we're just kind of coming to how it is. I feel like your point about the TV channels with what we have here is like DIY SOS, or like these shows about you need to make over yourself and your house, and is a really good point of like how to make consumption live ubiquitously in a culture.
There's one British show I love that would never be on the air in the US that goes against that, which is Repair Shop. In the US, the answer is never get it repaired.
Yeah, throw it out.
It's always throw it away and get a new one. But I love Repair Shop.
Yeah. There's little gems, but again, it's things like that are becoming very rare. And we're seeing them as kind of like weird relics, where I'm like, again, that auntie, she's got a sewing machine she's had for 40 years, and I know the one.
Repair shop.
She is a repair shop. And she also happens to be running the community like fund that isn't on the books, but it's helping people get out of poverty. Like it's enabling people to like put extensions in their homes without taking out a loan from the bank, which is going to create interest, which is creating wealth from no wealth. From like, these things exist, like the circular economy, whatever you want to call it, like overconsumption, like all of these words, man, you put them in because you had to play by your rules. There are people who haven't played by your rules and have won because it's not a rigged system from the beginning. That's all I want to say about this book, I think.
So how do we sell the idea of consuming less? Like, how do we make that go viral? How do we spread this realization that you and I have, that consumption is not the way?
That's a really good question. I would say it's almost like a distraction technique that I would use. So what I mean by that is like like you have a kid too who's similar age to me, and the way that I get her to do stuff is I get to focus on something else entirely. So maybe it's like less don't consume, more this is what to do with your time and money. I feel like it's a distraction technique that we would need, rather than a complete reversal of like don't consume, because the moment you say consume, you've put the thought in their head of like, oh, what am I going to give up? So rather than a sacrifice, I think it would be a thing of like switch it out for, or spend more time with your loved ones, or like do like 80, have your like almost kind of the Sabbath, but not where we say this is, you're going to contribute a day towards your mental well-being, and what that looks like is spend some time with the person who you know you love and you don't spend enough time with. So that's what I would almost like fill it with the love that would allow you to gape that hole, like bridge that hole inside of you that creates the lack that makes you want to consume more. Does that make sense? Like that's the way I would do it.
So, but pushing back, I think
Go on.
anytime you do that, if people aren't making the purposeful decision to consume less for consuming less sake, then any sort of movement you create will get swept up by marketers, and they'll be like, buy this thing to maximize your time with your loved ones, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
Like you were talking about running. Running is something you can do. It should be so simple. You shouldn't need to consume a lot. But now all of a sudden there's like 50 gadgets and goos you need to run well.
Literally, it's gadgets and goos. That's actually what running is now. It's gadgets. Yeah. I think that's really, honestly, like I may write a Substack called Gadgets and Goos. Running is now the gadgets and the goos. Like when it just used to be running.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could potentially, yeah, like the anti-consumption, it would have to have some kind of alliteration in it now that I know gadgets and goos, but it would be like the anti-consumption hour or the anti-consumption thing. I think for who we're talking to, I would actually align it very well with justice. I would say just do it for justice. Like take the thing out of your basket for justice's sake. So like 3 for you and 1 for justice. Maybe that's what I would do. So like maybe that would be the campaign of like, you've got 4 things in your basket, have 3 for you and then kick 1 out for justice. Maybe that's the way to think about it. Like the next time, 3 for you, 1 for justice, and get rid of that one. Like that one gets the kick. It would be a challenge that I would have, maybe like the justice challenge or something like that, of like, what can you unconsume today? And yeah, I think maybe a reinvention of culture of giving and sharing is maybe a way forward. You could call it circular economy, but it really is just sharing. Like what is it that you could outsource? But that would be a change.
Share more and buy fewer gifts. Like that's what I would like.
Especially kids, man.
I hate buying gifts for other parents because I know their kids don't need it and it's just going to be a burden. And I always put on our birthday parties like no gifts necessary, and I mean it. But people do buy stuff anyways. But we've done things like last year, like something we did last year for Christmas to avoid it all was we took a trip. We were like, we're not buying you kids anything. Like, we're going to just take a fun trip. We went and stayed at Great Wolf Lodge, which is another kind of consumption, but it's like an experience. It's like it's like a water park inside a hotel. So
that sounds lit. I want to go. Why don't you take me? Absolutely. Another way that you could do it is like when we say like 1 for justice is you can choose to donate that money. So like yes, there is a consumption, but like it's a donate thing. So
have you seen the Fast for Gaza?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. So that's that same thought, and I just wonder like how do we I feel like people are getting close. Like you've got BDS, you've got Fast for Gaza, you've got there's Buy Nothing days. There's like all these like, but I want people to see that it's not just these isolated targeted things. And there's also like the spiritual component there, which like whether it's Yom Kippur or Ramadan, there's like cultural reasons to practice consuming less.
Yeah.
And
I do also,
and I just want like everyone to connect all the dots and see that we can crash the global economy and achieve a glorious revolution if we just stop.
Or at least show that you have the ability to.
Yeah.
Because let's say like I know that it's that thing of like the world stopped shopping and we stopped shopping forever. But again, I don't think it's the consistent crash. I think it's the showing them that we could crash it.
Just like one day, like 1 week or something.
Correct. Which I think
we get everyone on the same page, you know.
Now now asking more interesting questions. Now we're getting to the point of critical mass, where the people who have the outlets that could acquire critical mass are coming onto the side of justice, which is why it's very important. Not exactly how many, but who is on the side of justice. This is the more important question, I think, in 2025, right? Because everyone who doesn't have a following could be on the side of justice, but the moment you can organize is a 1 step up. But in order to organize, you need eyeballs. In order to do that, you need to be like a person who is a person of influence. So if you can get everyone or enough people who have enough influence to say this is the day we stop spending, then I think it's a no-brainer. And again, if you just say this is a week of no spending, that's perfect. And again, I'm not about like, oh, let's do it so everyone loses their job. It's just a thing to show this is where the power is. Because if you say this is where the power is and we can do this to you, then that sends a stronger signal than I think in my head, like which are very important. but
It's been
protest.
tried like throughout. I've
Yeah.
seen these efforts throughout
Yeah.
the last year and a half. You know,
I
I'll
think we need
see
to do
a
them again.
flyer, but it's not coordinated enough, and it
Yeah.
hasn't been, again, like you said, like the influencers with followings in the millions.
I think, you know what, yeah, I hate to give him props, but if Piers Morgan said this is the day we're not gonna, like, I'm talking about that kind of level of eyeballs.
Yeah,
I'm not even, and I hate that I'm saying this, but
yeah.
like that's the level of, because this is what we're saying is like this is what it would take. This kind of, or Candace Owens, because she's free range, right? So we're talking like all these free range chickens say this is what we're doing, and we do it. That's when I think we could have a productive conversation.
I don't know if anyone with a platform that size, though, would say that, because once you get to a platform that size, you're beholden to advertisers.
Any
You know,
free range
there's like
chicken.
corruption that happens.
There is, I agree with you, but it's essentially literally any free range chicken who's willing to lose money, because all of
Yeah.
us who are doing this, we know we've lost money. Like, bro, I don't care, take it. I don't care.
It has
Go
to be people who don't have stock investments. Like, we don't, like the vast
yeah,
majority of the US, like it doesn't matter if the stock market like crashes, like we're not going to be able to retire anyways. You know, like there's not going to be anything left for us.
yeah.
But people, I don't know.
I think
Yeah.
that's the only way to do it. In my mind, it's this book is a very good illustration of what the impact would
Yeah.
be if you were to collectively do this out of choice. That's what
Yeah.
I like about this book. It's a good illustration of, should there be a calamity so large that you need to send a message so big and so quick, stopping spending is the ideal form of
Yeah.
protest. And the way to do it, in my opinion, as we're about to reach critical mass of those who have influence and a stage and a platform and attention, if we were all to say, okay, cool, this is the day. And even if, again, a quarter of us do not spend on that day, you've done a huge service. So we do with that what we will. That's my hot take. Yeah.
That would be wild because she has a whole line of toys.
But that's what it would take.
Yeah.
This
But
is
that's
my
why I think she's not going to do it. I think it has to come from the people who are a little more down. Well, she might. I mean, she has some integrity, but
even
even
if she
for
says
me,
she's
it's
quiet
hard.
for a
I'm
day.
thinking about it. Like you know, have been, my publishers asking me to try to sell these last 500 copies of we printed a fundraiser, 2,500 hard copies of my book. And we've sold like 2,000, but there's like 500 of these hardcovers left. And then there's not going to be any more. But they're a fundraiser for Mecca for Peace. So if I don't sell them, then Mecca just doesn't get the rest of its money. And then Interlink has a sunk cost in that they printed more of these books than it sold. And they're just going to be sitting in their warehouse taking up space. And they're like, they don't get the profits to put back into publishing, you know? So I've been trying to like sell these hardcovers on every one of my videos. And I'm like, oh, like, doesn't really, if I was like to do a week of putting out a like don't buy anything message, then and then be like, but buy my book.
Or you could literally say, for a week, don't buy my book.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it would take. It's just
Yeah.
say, listen, man, for a week, not even for me, because that's a much more strong and sincere message. And we both say this as people who are trying to make money out of thin air every day. Literally, you're just trying to make, that's what the freelance world is. But it's a much more sincere message of like, listen, man, I support my friends' small businesses as much as you want to support H&M.
Yeah.
But this 1 week, just don't do it.
Yeah.
Save it all until the next week. And then we can start having a product. And again, it's just that thing of just like pause for a week. If Miss Rachel said, I'm shutting down my website for a week, she's going to live the next week. Like it's not going to stop her. Like it's just that thing of like, just show, it's more a symbolic thing of like, we could actually do this. But
then what's the next? So then if it's a threat to the powers that be, and the demand is what? Then you have to specify a demand. Is the demand like allow humanitarian aid into Gaza and a permanent ceasefire? I mean, that would be great. But there's still the problem of overconsumption, or you don't like that word, but there's still the problem of consumption long term dooming all of us because of
I think that's much more a human issue of like, honestly, get some friends in your life, get some people in your life who bridge that gap, because those who are genuinely content which is the thing that this book doesn't want to admit. Like, there are people
Yeah.
who just are content with less. How did they do that? They just started living more in the reality, and they were like, even if I do buy all this stuff, I'm not going to be able to enjoy it. So what do I
Yeah.
actually enjoy? It's like time to just slow down. So it's a change in culture. If we're really thinking about really what does it mean, is just recommunicate, recalibrate as humans.
Yeah.
I think that's the only sustainable way to do it. But know that it is a human condition to always want more. It's just you're going to be constantly fighting yourself to want less of it, because the advertisers will always want you to spend. Like, no one is acting in your best interest who wants you to spend money. Or very rarely, who's selling you like a piece of clothing that you already could own, or whatever it is, man.
Yeah.
Like, just do your due diligence and just be like, is this another thing that's gonna,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I keep coming back to, like, the way I've done it is really realize that I've never spent a superfluous thing where it's really made a real impact in my joy of experience of reality.
Yeah.
And if that's what you're trying to achieve,
Yeah.
then yeah. But again, it's much easier to be fickle. So that's a bigger, harder question.
Yeah. This is a good point too. This has certainly been true in my experience, is that like consuming less is a habit that I get better at over time.
Yeah. So you start off with 3 for you and 1 for justice, and then 2 for you and 1 for justice.
Yeah.
And then 1 for you and 1 for justice, and then all for justice.
Yeah. Well,
So
some good suggestions of ideas for names in the comments. I like the idea of thrifting too, because that's another piece of this, is our economy is not doing great in the US. There's major inflation happening. And just regular old thriftiness is like part of this. Like, it's wild how many YouTube videos I've been seeing that are like, here's how to deal with the recession. And it's like, it sounds a bit like your issues with JB McKinnon, because for me it's like the most basic stuff, like only go out to a restaurant once a week, and I'm like, who the fuck is going out to a restaurant more than once a week? Like, I can't afford that.
Yeah.
But you know,
like a you problem. Like, that's not us. That ain't us.
Yeah, exactly. That's why everyone's calling overconsumption. It's like everyone's bar is like in a very different place with that.
Yeah,
so.
it stops. Yeah, the thing of overconsumption.
Yeah.
By whose standard? Always ask by whose standard. Also, if you're the moment you're reading, it's like nobody expected this. That's what I hate about one of the worst, most triggering things I read in that. No one expected it. By whose standard? Who's expecting?
No one.
Yeah. No one. What were you expecting? Like, yeah. And when they allude to stuff and never say that there's wisdom in other places, there just happens to be coincidences. That's also mildly triggering for me. There's loads of stuff I found quite triggering in here.
Well, I'm really glad that you shared those criticisms with us, and I definitely see it now and feel, should have seen it, I guess, sooner. But yeah, my feeling about the guy was that he was just sort of a academic white guy liberal who is like a bit elitist and out of touch. But there were a lot of interesting ideas in the book that I think I'll move forward with in thinking about my own consumption and just how I guess I appreciate the thesis of the book of just how much consumption is tied to climate change, and like how much consumption is just like the big problem. And it's the big problem that the every elite institution that's trying to solve climate change won't talk about. They won't address it.
The funders won't allow it because their funders are profiting us consuming in the way that we're consuming. I think there was a very good point that he made, that like growth in the global economy hasn't always been a given for ages, and this much growth at this rate. Like, it always used to grow at like 0.1% a year for like centuries and centuries, and it's because people were just like, nah, this is fine. But the moment you dig into ego, like, I think that the pivot in advertising of like going just straight for the ego kill, I think is quite damning.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, we may not have solved consumption today, but I really enjoyed our conversation. And thank you to everybody in the chat who offered your comments and suggestions. I tried not to put up as many comments this time.
Oh, should we go? It's because I get distracted. I'm so sorry.
Well, we have like a few minutes left if anybody wants to ask some questions or
as long as like you. As long as we have grown up girls. I'm a grown up girl. Okay, yeah, looking forward to this. Great, cool. Hello from Algeria. Oh my gosh, hello from Algeria. Oh, Algerians are so cool, man. We're not drinking Coke, and we close down KFC in Algeria. It's amazing. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Algeria. The way that they consume is actually really cool, and I think the whole philosophy and culture of is phenomenal.
This one, so this comment about like every restaurant, cafe, or takeaway owned by Muslims that I've seen is Coca-Cola or PepsiCo. I don't know what the country this is from, but in the US, this is every restaurant. Like pretty much like almost every restaurant is just Coke and Pepsi products. And so because I've been doing BDS like for a little while now with both of those, it's like I just don't drink soda anymore, and sometimes I really miss it. But there are sometimes like sometimes there are like little coffee shops and stuff that have like local sodas and things that you can get. Like St. Arnold's is a brewery here. They have like a root beer that they make. But yeah, wouldn't it be cool if there were more locally owned sodas?
Yeah. By the way, the one of the reasons that these restaurants, and I agree with you. I don't know if you're from the UK, but I see the same thing in the UK. So you may be from the UK. Is that people keep buying it? If we were all to stop buying it, then they wouldn't stock it. It's very, very simple. But I agree with you that they do stock it, and that is a problem. But because they also need to do with their bottom line. So yeah, and also tell them off. Like when you're there, just be like, ew. I think people underestimate the power of ew in the culture. Like if my friend had a Starbucks cup, I'd be like, ew. And I would say that. And I feel like that, if someone ewed my drink, I'd be like, oh. Like, so consider just ewing, and just being like, that's not cool, brother, and just see what happens there. Just be like, oh, I don't think we should do that, and then give them an order, because there's loads of alternatives people know about them. That's what I'd say there. That's what I've been doing. Sorry to be awkward.
I want to thank this person for their efforts canvassing to try to stop Israeli products. I've been hearing more about this, people doing these things, contacting grocery stores and stuff. And I think that's like a cool form of activism. I haven't really gotten involved with it yet. I think it's really cool though.
Yeah, it's very good. We like direct action. We love direct action. Boycott and do direct action. We need you guys. So yes, thank you. And also, if people have the capacity to do that, please do that. Everyone should do protests in the way that they are able to. And sometimes that's shifting culture. Sometimes this is very much direct action. Some of us, some of these men are going to prison. So like, if whatever's in your capacity to do. And thank you very much, TW, for doing canvassing. You're doing a lot of work. Cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Saffana.
Thank you. Thank you, Sim. Thank you, everyone.
Great. We'll be back in June. Last Sunday of June.
Yeah, we will. And I don't know if we'll have a book then, but we'll
talk about it. We haven't,
you got time.
I'll let you know if there's a book that you all want to read along.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thanks so much for listening.
Bye.